You notice it before the first drop hits the ground. The feeders empty out. The yard, which 10 minutes ago had a pair of cardinals working through the sunflower seeds and a nuthatch moving headfirst down the oak, goes quiet in a way that feels different from ordinary quiet. The birds are gone. And then the rain starts, and you assume, the way most people assume, that the birds went somewhere to wait it out. Somewhere sheltered, somewhere dry, somewhere safe. But what actually happens to your birds when it rains is one of the most misunderstood sequences in backyard bird behavior. And it is not simple. It is not the same for every species, and in some cases, what your birds do in rain is the opposite of what you would expect. What you are about to learn happens dozens of times every year in your yard, every time the sky goes gray and the air pressure drops and the light changes. You have been watching the beginning of it for years. You have never seen the rest. Welcome back to Backyard Bird Mind. Subscribe before we go further, because what happens in your yard during rain involves physiology, behavior, and decision-making that researchers have only recently begun to fully map. Stay until the end, because the last thing we cover is something that almost no one who watches birds ever thinks about. And once you understand it, the next rainy morning in your yard will never look the same. Today we are going into the rain, into what your birds actually do when it falls. Number 1, your birds know the rain is coming before you do. The way they know should stop you. There is a reason the feeders empty before the storm. It is not coincidence, and it is not luck. It is biology operating at a level of sensitivity that no instrument on your weather app can match. Birds have a sensory system that humans entirely lack. Located in the inner ear and in specialized pressure receptors throughout the body, this system detects changes in barometric pressure with extraordinary precision. As a storm system approaches, the atmospheric pressure drops measurably hours before the first clouds arrive. Your birds feel that drop. They respond to it immediately and deliberately. Research from the University of Minnesota tracking weather patterns alongside bird feeder activity found that bird feeding behavior surged significantly in the hours before a major rain event. Not after, not during, before. Birds increase their feeding rate because they are loading calories in anticipation of a period when feeding will be difficult or impossible. They are not reacting to the rain. They are preparing for it. This is why your feeders are busiest in that narrow window of gray, cool, slightly strange-feeling air that arrives before a storm. The light is odd, the pressure is falling, and your birds are eating as if they know exactly what is about to happen. Because they do. The ruby-throated hummingbird can detect barometric pressure changes small enough that researchers use hummingbird behavior as a proxy measurement in some field studies. A hummingbird that is visiting your feeder every 15 minutes under normal conditions will shift to continuous feeding in the hour before a significant rain event. It is burning through its caloric reserves and replacing them in real time before a period when the insects it depends on will disappear entirely. What this means for your yard is this: the next time your feeders go suddenly, inexplicably busy, and the birds seem almost frantic about it, check the forecast. You will almost certainly find that rain is coming in the next few hours. Your birds already know. Number 2, what happens to feathers in rain and why it matters more than most people realize. Most people assume birds get wet and miserable in the rain the way a dog does, saturated, heavy, cold. That is not what happens. What actually happens is more complicated, more species-specific, and in some cases, more dangerous. Bird feathers are not waterproof in the way rain gear is waterproof. They are water-resistant in a much more nuanced way. The outer contour feathers on most songbirds are coated with oils produced by the uropygial gland, a small structure at the base of the tail that most birds preen from regularly. When a bird draws its bill across its feathers during preening, it is distributing this oil, maintaining a physical structure in the feather barbules that causes water to bead and roll off rather than penetrate. This works well in light rain. In heavy, sustained rain, it begins to fail. The structure that repels water can be overwhelmed, and when the outer feathers become saturated, the insulating layer of down underneath, which traps warm air and keeps the bird at operating temperature, loses its structure and its function. A bird with compromised insulation in cold rain is in genuine physiological trouble. Heat loss accelerates. Energy demands spike. A small bird, a chickadee, a kinglet, a wren, can enter a state of dangerous hypothermia not in hours but in minutes under the wrong conditions. This is why behavior in rain is not passive, it is urgent. What your birds do in sustained rain is move to cover and stay there. Dense shrubs, thick canopied conifers, brush piles, the center of a leafy tree where the canopy intercepts the rain before it reaches the bird. They orient themselves with their backs to the wind, reducing the surface area exposed, and they compress their feathers in a specific pattern that sheds water more efficiently than relaxed plumage. A bird hunkered in rain looks smaller than normal. That compression is intentional. What this tells you about your yard is something most people never think about when they plan a bird-friendly space. The shrubs and brush piles and dense hedges you maintain are not decoration. On a cold, rainy day in November, they are the difference between a bird that survives the afternoon and one that does not. Number 3, the birds that don't stop in rain, and what that behavior actually means. Here is where the story gets more complicated, because not all birds take cover in rain. And the ones that don't are doing something that reveals a level of weather-adapted behavior that surprises almost everyone who learns about it. The American robin is one of the most visible examples. You have probably seen it. Rain is falling steadily, the yard is empty, the feeders are abandoned, and there is a robin on the lawn, completely unconcerned, pulling worms with the same deliberate efficiency it brings to any other morning. This is not indifference. This is strategy. Rain drives earthworms to the surface. The mechanism is not fully settled in scientific literature. Some researchers point to vibration, others to soil saturation, others to changes in oxygen levels underground. But the result is consistent and exploitable. When it rains, worms come up, and robins, which locate prey primarily by sight and by the vibration cues their feet detect through the ground, have access to a food source that is dramatically more concentrated and available than at any other time. The robin's feather structure is well suited to wet conditions. Its relatively large body size gives it a better surface area to volume ratio than smaller birds, meaning it loses heat more slowly. It can work in moderate rain without significant physiological cost. What you're watching when you see a robin in the rain is not a bird that forgot to take cover. You are watching a bird that has calculated the cost of the rain against the benefit of the food source and decided the math works in its favor. House sparrows make a similar calculation around feeders. In light to moderate rain, house sparrows are often among the last birds to leave covered feeder stations. They huddle against the roof edge of hopper feeders or press into the narrow dry zone beneath a feeder roof and continue eating through precipitation that has driven every other species into cover. They are exploiting the cleared competition. Number 4. What your birds do with their time when the rain is heavy and the yard is still. The birds in your yard during a sustained heavy rain are not simply waiting. They are doing things that reveal the full complexity of what a small wild animal does when its normal activity is constrained. Preening is the primary behavior. This is not incidental. During rain, birds preen continuously and deliberately. They are managing the structural integrity of every feather in ways that require individual attention to individual feather tracts. The bill works through the barbs of each feather, realigning the interlocking barbules that give the feather its aerodynamic and insulating properties. Ornithologists at the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds found that garden birds in the United Kingdom spent significantly more time preening during and immediately after rain events than during dry weather. This is not comfort grooming, it is maintenance essential to survival. A bird with structurally compromised feathers cannot fly at full efficiency, cannot thermoregulate properly, cannot function at the level a wild animal must function to survive. Preening is not downtime, it is work. During heavy sustained rain, birds also enter periods of what researchers call passive thermoregulation. They tuck one leg up into the body feathers, reducing heat loss from the limbs. They orient to reduce their wind and rain profile. They may enter a slight torpor during very long events, reducing metabolic rate to conserve energy reserves. A bird sitting motionless in a dense shrub during a rainstorm is not simply bored or uncomfortable. It is running a sophisticated energy management strategy, burning as little fuel as possible while maintaining the physiological readiness to move the instant conditions change. What this means for the way you watch your yard is this: an empty, still, rain-soaked yard is not empty. It is full of birds you cannot see, pressed into cover, preening, managing their temperature, waiting with a patience and precision that no amount of discomfort disrupts. They are a few feet from where they always are. You simply cannot see them. Number 5. The first 10 minutes after rain stops and why you should be watching. This is the part that most people miss. This is the part worth setting a timer for. When the rain stops, your yard does not immediately return to normal. What happens in the first 10 minutes after a rain event ends is one of the most activity-dense windows in the entire day of backyard bird behavior. The birds come out fast. They come out hungry. They come out in an order that reveals the social hierarchy at your feeder with unusual clarity because the competition is at its most intense right after a rain event. Reserves have been depleted. Insects are suddenly available. Worms are still on the surface. The window is short before the sun drives them back underground, and the birds that didn't take your feeder during the rain now want it urgently. The first birds back at the feeder after rain are almost always the dominant individuals of each species. The male cardinal before the female, the dominant chickadee before the subordinate ones, the blue jay before everything else at the platform feeder. Within 2 to 3 minutes, the full social structure of your feeder reestablishes itself in fast motion. But something else happens in the post-rain window that has nothing to do with the feeder. Your lawn and garden beds become temporarily extraordinary foraging environments. The rain has moved invertebrates. Insects that were sheltering under leaves and in soil crevices are displaced and visible. Robins work fast through wet grass. Starlings move through open areas in that head-forward probing walk. Thrushes, if they are in your area, may appear at the garden edge. Cornell Lab of Ornithology's eBird data shows that bird sightings and species diversity in residential yards spike sharply in the hour following rain events. More species are visible, more activity is happening, more behavior is observable than at almost any other time of day. If you want to watch your yard at its most alive, wait for rain to stop and then stand at your window. The 10 minutes that follow are worth more than almost any other 10 minutes of the day. Number 6. What rain reveals about your birds that clear days hide. There is a final piece to this that most people never put together, and it is the reason I saved it for last. Rain changes what you can see. It strips the yard down. The birds that stay, the ones that come back first, the ones that press into the specific cover structures in your yard while the storm passes, all of this reveals something about your yard that dry days conceal. Where your birds go in rain tells you exactly which structures in your yard they trust. The holly bush that a cardinal disappears into when rain begins is not just a plant. It is a roosting site, a shelter site, a survival site that a specific bird has evaluated and committed to. The dense arborvitae in your corner, the brush pile you have been meaning to clean up, the thick inner branches of your old spruce, these are the bones of your bird's survival infrastructure, and rain makes them visible in a way that dry weather does not. Research from the British Trust for Ornithology studying garden bird behavior during weather events found that birds consistently return to the same shelter sites across multiple rain events, sometimes to the specific branch or the specific cavity entrance, building a map of reliable refuge that they update and refine over years. The birds in your yard know every dense shrub, every sheltered overhang, every protected cavity with a precision you have probably never thought about. They have tested these sites. They know which ones stay dry, which ones stay warm, which ones are large enough to squeeze into with a neighbor when the temperature drops and the rain goes horizontal. And they remember. A cardinal that sheltered in your holly bush in November will shelter there in March. The map is retained. The site is trusted. What this means is that when you plant a dense evergreen shrub, when you let a brush pile stay in the corner of the yard instead of hauling it away, when you add a roosting box to your feeder station, you are not just improving your yard aesthetically or even just providing food. You are adding to the survival infrastructure of birds that have already been mapping your yard with a precision and a memory that you have probably never given them credit for. They know your yard better than you do. Rain is one of the few moments when you get to see some of what they know. The feeders go empty, the branches go still. The yard closes down in that particular gray way that only rain brings. You stand at the window looking at what seems like nothing, at a yard that seems to have emptied out entirely. But you know now what is actually happening. A cardinal is pressed into the holly, feathers compressed, oriented to the wind, preening in that slow, deliberate way while the rain comes down. A chickadee is in the woodpecker hole in the oak, already in a mild torpor, conserving fuel, waiting. A robin is on the back lawn, soaking wet, unbothered, working the worms. The yard did not empty. It reorganized around the rain, around survival, around the structures and the maps and the calculations that your birds carry in their bodies and their memories and never stop running. And in 10 minutes, or 30, or whenever the pressure shifts and the light changes and the birds feel what you will only see in another hour when the clouds begin to break, they will come back to the feeder and the branches and the lawn,